Chapter 20. Dealing with the shunt, qualifying the opportunity.
When it comes to dealing with shunts at this stage of the process, there are really only two varieties, those that come from Tommie, VITO's private assistant, and those that come directly from VITO. In handling both, remember a principle I've shared with you earlier. It's one of the most important of all VITO rules, and it amounts to a Golden Rule of Shunts.
VITO Rule number 27. You will inevitably be shunted to the person within VITO Incorporated whom you sound the most like.
In other words, if you want to begin your sales cycle with Seemore, then go ahead and sound like Seemore. If you want to begin your sales cycle with VITO, then you better sound like VITO. With that important principle in mind, let's take a look at the two worlds where you are likely to encounter shunts. Tommie's world and VITO's world.
Tommie's world. The easiest way for VITO's private assistant to dust off a salesperson is to shunt him or her to someone of lesser authority.
Here's what might happen. Shortly before the time you are supposed to call VITO, your inbound line rings. You pick up the receiver and a crisp, professional-sounding voice says,
Tommie. Mr. Prosper, this is Tommie from Mr. Benefito's office, calling to tell you that Mr. Benefito looked at your letter and wants you to contact our purchasing department. Friday is the day our buyers accept calls from companies that start with a Z. Have a nice day. Oh, I've got to run to catch another line.
If this happens to you, it could be because you haven't followed my instructions on how to write an effective VITO letter. You might want to go back to that chapter and fully listen to it again and recreate your VITO letter. Or you can take me up on the offer that I'll give you at the end of this audiobook to have me create that correspondence for you. Alternatively, you're making your very first call to VITO at precisely the right day and time. You call VITO's line and you hear one ring, two rings, three rings, and then,
Miss Importante's office, this is Tommie. How may I help you?
Your response could sound something like this. Tommie, thanks for taking my call. This is Will Prosper with Zipline, the CEO of the world's largest electronic manufacturer. And then, right there, Tommie interrupts you and says,
I've got your letter right here. It would be best if you contacted our Chief Operations Officer. She's in charge of all infrastructure resources, including our manufacturing operations. Hold on, let me connect you.
What do? You'll recall that a little earlier in the book, I suggested that you know the names and titles of the decision makers who would serve your sales efforts best. In my personal case, as someone who helps sales teams, that's typically the VP of sales or the chief marketing officer. Who is it in your case? Who would VITO hold most responsible for implementing the results of whatever it is you sell? If you don't know, you're not ready to deal with shunts from either Tommie's world or VITO's world. Take a minute right now, and don't go any further until you've accurately listed the names and titles of the perfect shunt target for what you sell. If you're considering any other title lower than a decision maker or a direct report to VITO, the very important top officer, then go all the way back to Chapter 1 and start listening to the book all over again. Now, knowing the right title isn't enough. You'll also need to know the names of the individuals who match up with those titles. Yep, you must do this for each of the organizations you're making your VITO launch on. Assuming, that is, that you want to effectively sidestep any premature shunts and make sure the shunts you do get are the shunts you want. Let's take that first situation where Tommie called you and wants to shunt you down to Linoleumville.
Tommie, Mr. Benefito looked at your letter and wants you to contact our purchasing department.
I hope you know by now that if you let this shunt down to Linoleumville happen, you'll be spiraling into a long, drawn-out sales cycle that will be paved with lots of to-dos and end with little or no business, like a one-way ticket to sales hell. Here's how to stop the shunt to Linoleumville. You could say something like this. Tommie, thanks, but your purchasing department may not be the best place for us to start our process of understanding exactly how we can, in the next 144 days, increase shareholder value, reduce cycle time, and eliminate as much as $87.9 million in monthly direct costs. Then you'll pause briefly and continue with, another major manufacturer found that their COO was able to quickly evaluate our ideas. In your organization, that would be Deborah Smith.
Important note. If you don't know the name of the decision maker of choice at VITO Incorporated, this response will lose much of its power.
Now you can pause briefly and continue with, would you like to introduce me to your COO, Deborah Smith, or would you prefer that I make the call on my own? No matter what answer you get, you're going to want to qualify this lead before you reach out to that COO. I'll be sharing more with you about that qualifying in just a second. First, though, let's look at the next situation where Tommie wants to prematurely shunt you to a decision maker who definitely isn't the person you want to talk to.
Just a second, Mr. Prosper. I've got your letter right here. It would be best if you contacted our Chief Operations Officer. He's in charge of all infrastructure resources, including our manufacturing operations. Hold on. Let me connect you.
Now, I realize that you'll be tempted to take this shunt. After all, the COO of any organization isn't a bad place to start your sales process. There are, however, a few questions you still need to ask Tommie before you fully qualify this opportunity.
Number 1. What specific goals, plans, and objectives must be overachieved over the next month, or quarter, or other specific period of time at VITO Incorporated? Number 2. What are the expectations of a business partner that can help accomplish that for VITO Incorporated? Number 3. If the objectives in number 1 and the expectations in number 2 can be exceeded, would VITO consider you his or her business partner of choice during the next month or quarter or other specific period of time?
Yes, you must ask Tommie these questions and get clear answers before accepting this shunt. And remember, you're interacting with Tommie as though VITO did not exist. If you do that, then you will find more often than not that Tommie will share or track down VITO's benchmarks in all of these areas. Do not accept a shunt from an unqualified opportunity.
VITO's world. You begin your first call with VITO, and because it's your lucky day, VITO interrupts you with a proposed shunt.
Hold on, I remember seeing this somewhere. It would be best if you contacted our Chief Operations Officer. He's in charge of all infrastructure resources, including our manufacturing operations. Hold on, let me get Tommie to connect you. Your response could sound something like this. Mr. Benefito, before your COO spends his valuable time with me, let me ask you something. What personal expectations do you have of a business partner that can help you overachieve your goals of increasing shareholder value, further reducing your cycle time, and cutting your monthly operational costs? By the way, if you sent your VITO letter and your opening statement was tagged into your headline just as I've taught you, and VITO was interested enough to shunt you to a decision maker, you basically know the answer to this first question. Ask the question anyway. After you get your answer, you'll move on to, Mr. Benefito, if your COO confirms that your objectives in this area can be exceeded by working with us, and we're able to exceed your personal expectations of a business partner, could you see yourself becoming one of our customers between now and the end of next month? I realize you're probably not used to qualifying an opportunity in this way, and I also realize that you probably have been given a lot of advice about other ways to qualify opportunities. This advice typically involves spending lots of time with Seemore down in Linoleumville. I want you to change your process and ask VITO this question directly while you have VITO on the line. Would you like to know why it's so important for you to ask VITO and or Tommie this type of question? It's simple. VITO and Tommie are the only people in the enterprise who both know the answer to the question and are willing to share that answer with you on the first call. If VITO says yes, then follow VITO's orders and go to the COO. If VITO says no, you may want to consider asking this question. Mr. Benefito, you most likely have a good reason for saying that. Could you please tell me what it is?
Qualified or unqualified?
If VITO and or Tommie tells you, frankly, there is no daylight and there's no chance to win business this fiscal year or whatever time frame you asked about, then you could say thank you and make a note to check back in 3 months or so. Do not invest your time, effort, and energy in this opportunity if you have not qualified it. If VITO or Tommie tells you that you have a shot and you're much more likely to get this information than you think, you accept the shunt. Follow the breadcrumbs to the decision maker's door and remember these 3 questions.
This should sound familiar. Number 1. What specific goals, plans, and objectives must be overachieved over the next month, or quarter, or other specific period of time at VITO Incorporated? Number 2. What are the expectations of a business partner that can help accomplish that for VITO Incorporated? And number 3. If the objectives in number 1 and the expectations in number 2 can be exceeded, would VITO consider you his or her business partner of choice during the next month or quarter or other specific period of time?
You must, I repeat must, get the answers from either VITO or Tommie, preferably VITO, before you proceed to go anywhere else in VITO Incorporated.
VITO Rule number 28. Do not accept shunts from unqualified opportunities.
Ask yourself, would your organization's VITO accept the shunt without determining the benchmarks for success on both sides of the relationship? Assuming that you're able to confirm that you do have a shot at the business, you now face an all-important question. How do you make sure that your first contact with VITO's corner office isn't your last contact? You'll get the answer to that little brain teaser in our next chapter.
Chapter 19. Pay dirt. Pay dirt. A noun. Any source of success or wealth. A fortunate discovery or profitable venture. From dictionary.com.
Okay, you're ready. You sent your letter to VITO. It's exactly the time you said you would call VITO. You've got some butterflies in your stomach, but you know what? That's good. You need some energy and excitement for this call. You'll use it to pick up that 3,000-pound phone and dial VITO's number. You do just that, and VITO picks up. You'd lay your opening statement out exactly as I've taught you. At this point, there are 6 things that can happen, and all of them good.
VITO Rule number 26. Be ready for each of the 6 good things that can happen during a call to veto. Good thing number 1. Veto interrupts you. Remember, that's a good thing. And your conversation goes like this.
Hold on, I don't have time for this. I'm heading off to a meeting. Here's your response. Okay, when we do have a chance to catch up, let's make sure we chat about increasing your shareholder value while cutting your time to market and saving up to $87,000 a month in direct costs. Now comes the hard part. Stop talking, pause, and wait to see what happens next. Here's what could happen. That meeting that Vito was running off to will be put on hold, and you'll hear something pretty close to this. Exactly how do you do that? Your response? Well, which part should we look at first? Increasing shareholder value, cutting time to market, or slashing direct costs?
Good thing number 2. You lay out your opening statement, and Vito interrupts you and says,
This doesn't sound like anything I'd be interested in. Your response to Vito? Okay, no surprise. Before you get back to your busy day, let me ask you, in what area of your organization do you want to see the biggest improvements in the shortest period of time? Now, here comes the hard part. Stop talking, pause, and see what happens next. Here's what could happen. Vito could say, since you ask, manufacturing cost overruns. Then you could reply with, we have a proven repeatable process that typically involves 3 specific areas. They are A, B, and C. Which one would you like to dive into right now?
Caution. What you definitely do not want to do is a feature dump on Vito. Make sure what you say is rich in benefits and hard and soft value. Good thing number 3. Vito interrupts you and says,
Vito says something like, no thanks. We've got all the help we need in this area. Our current business relationships are satisfying all our needs. Your response to that? Is importante. Would you like to know if your loyalty to your existing source of supply could be costing you anything? Now, here comes the hard part. Stop talking and pause and wait and see what happens next. Here's what could happen. Vito could say something like, what do you mean by that? Your response? Of the 756 customers we have, 34 are in your industry. We've been able to increase shareholder value, cut time to market, and save over $87,000 each month of direct cost. What's the best way to see if similar or greater results can be yours between now and the end of next month?
Good thing number 4. Vito interrupts you and says,
why don't you just send me some information? Great, and thanks for the request. Would you prefer to watch, listen, or read about how we've been able to increase shareholder value, cut time to market, and save over $87,000 a month in direct cost for 34 other CEOs in the manufacturing industry? Now comes the hard part. Stop talking and pause and wait and see what happens next. Here's what could happen. Vito could say something like, tell me the short version right now. Your response? Great. Which of the 3 areas would you like to dive into right now? Increasing shareholder value, reducing time to market, or reducing direct costs?
Caution. Remember, what you definitely do not want to do is a feature dump on Vito. Make sure what you say is rich in benefits and hard and soft value. Good thing number 5. Vito interrupts you and says,
we're too busy for this right now. Why don't you call me back in 6 months? Your response? Okay, just to let you know though, there's a strong possibility that during that time your organization could unintentionally waste as much as $260,000 a month of your hard-earned revenue. Now, here comes the hard part. Stop talking, pause, and wait to see what happens next. Here's what could happen. Vito could respond with, where the heck did you come up with that number? Your possible response? We've saved 34 other CEOs that much revenue, and we strongly suspect that we can deliver similar or even greater results with your manufacturing operations in the next 90 days.
Good thing number 6. VITO tries to point you towards someone else at VITO Incorporated.
Congratulations! This is exactly what you wanted to happen. I'll show you how to handle this best-case scenario in the next chapter. Remember, getting shunted is one of your major desired outcomes with your VITO calls. You're not trying to close this deal over the phone. You want to qualify this VITO opportunity and earn an appointment, and eventually earn what I call a golden VITO to VITO referral. I'll show you how to do both as soon as I share one more nugget with you about these critical opening seconds of the first call.
The last word about pay dirt. Pay dirt is not any one deal. It's your peer-to-peer relationship with VITO. If you stand your ground, know when to talk, and know when to stop talking. As Tony's taught you in this chapter, that relationship will be there for you whenever you need it, as your sales process moves forward at VITO Incorporated.
If you want to get on the fast track and get all those C-suite appointments you've worked hard for and deserve so you could sell more faster and crush your quota in the process, then all you need to do is go to our site, VITOSalesTraining.com. Click on the Take Action tab, scroll down till you see the VITO University logo, and check it out. And in the meantime, have yourself a masterful rest of the day. Bye-bye.